course, we continue talking about a lot of issues surrounding this repeat presidential election, and that's the main topic of discussion we want to conduct with my panelists. But before that, a quick highlight from the InfoTrack results released just a few moments ago with regard to which institutions you trust the most: the judiciary 75.8%, IEBC 39.5%, media 73.2%. The other question was asked is what would it take for, and let me just confirm that particular question, yes, what should IEBC do to conduct free and fair elections? 43.8% say CEO and top manager should resign. 41.1% say commissioners should resign. The question is, and this is a big question, is whether or not we are really ready for these elections. Let's get to hear what various people had to say with regard to the possibility of us having elections yesterday. But we do have some of the bites from the leaders who said this yesterday. Quite a number of political leaders talked about the issue of whether or not we are ready for the elections. Let's listen into that.
We said it yesterday that we expect them to do what they have to do. In any case, that ruling was stated as being within 60 days. All right? 17th is not the last day of the 60 days. This is one thing that needs to come out clearly. It is not the last of the 60 days. Judgment was on 1st of September. They have 60 days. Up to 1st of November. Okay. The second point is that if they do not show Kenyans and the international community that they are ready to undertake serious changes, then clearly it's like walking into a slaughterhouse, blindfolded.
Are we the ones who are supposed to conduct election? It's IEBC. Are they not supposed to conduct it as per the law? It is they are required to. If they don't do that, what are they doing? They are plunging the country into crisis. It is not NASA which is going to plunge this country into crisis. It is IEBC through either action or inaction. So I want to be very, very clear that IEBC holds this in their hands. They have it in their hands. It's like you have a bird in your hand. You can decide whether that bird lives or dies. You can decide to squeeze it and kill it, or let it go and live. So that is what IEBC has at the moment. And it is not about NASA. Nobody should blame NASA. If there will be crisis in this country, it will be created and caused solely by IEBC. And I see them really working hard to put this country into a terrible crisis.
If you're going to a match to play, let's assume it's FC Leopards playing with Gor Mahia. How do you expect to go play, and if it's Gor Mahia, FC are not in the field? Then you don't need to go for the game. So the issue of saying that it's not a must, that is wishful thinking. This thing was contested, and the petitioner, which is NASA, went to court. And the court ruling, the Supreme Court ruling, was very clear. And they've already mentioned that you're going to have two players. This is the Jubilee side and the NASA side. So if you go play alone, then there's no game.
But I think it should be noted that if NASA decides to boycott the elections, first of all, we'll welcome that very much, because it means we'll not have much competition. We'll go for the elections anyway, because that is a requirement of the law. We have been directed to go for fresh elections. You cannot vary that. That is the Constitution. If NASA decides not to go, that's their problem. No, I would not second guess. But I think all Kenyans should ask themselves, if NASA says they'll stop the elections from taking place, they should be able to tell us how exactly they're going to stop it, which law, which constitution, which avenue.
31 and a half days to the date set for the repeat presidential elections. Those are some of the varied opinions from our political players, both NASA and Jubilee there, disagreeing on whether or not those elections will actually take place. Hence the question, even as we sit here and discuss about repeat presidential elections, the Supreme Court nullifying the August 8th election, Eric Wanjohi, do you really think that we are going for these repeat elections?
Yes, we must go for an election.
There's we must, but are we ready to?
Note that, Fred, the elections that we're going to hold this time round come from a court order. By not holding an election, then the IEBC will be in contempt of court. An election must be held according to the verdict that was given. That's number one. Number two, IEBC must conduct the election in accordance to the Constitution and the laws provided. And I'll tell you this for free. You have seen all these political parties and political players giving their demands, and also the so-called observers giving their demands. The Constitution is clear about the role of IEBC. The IEBC Act is very clear. If you go to, for instance, Section 26, it is very clear that IEBC shall not be subject to the direction or control of any person or any authority, though they can consult. The question is, how do they consult? When it comes to consulting with political parties, again, it is very clear in their second schedule that they can consult with the political parties through the Political Parties Liaison Committee as set up in the Political Parties Act. The question is this: when they are relating with people like NASA, what capacity are they relating with NASA with? NASA is not a political party. NASA is a political coalition. If at all they're going to relate with any political party, call the representatives of the presidential, for instance, political parties, which in this case is ODM and Jubilee. Call the representatives from the Political Party Liaison Committee that has been set up in accordance to the Act. And if any other political party wants to come in, let them come in through the committee that has already been set
now
up.
That all this is not happening.
And they consult.
Yes.
But now when they start giving up all these demands, of course this is hogwash, because IEBC has a mandate to be independent. And the law is very clear that they cannot be directed by any person or even controlled by any person or any authority. Any information going to them, whether through stakeholder engagement or public participation, is just that. Engagement and participation. But the final word rests with IEBC in accordance to the law and the Constitution. And
that line, in accordance in strict conformity to the law and the regulations set in the Elections Act. Also, if I could mention this 11 point demands, which are called irreducible minimums. The question, Kanambani, is, have we set the bar too high that we know that IEBC cannot really achieve such an election, and therefore it will not happen?
Well, according to me, what IEBC should do is to sit back, comport itself, and work on what the court instructed them to do. And it is very simple. IEBC bought the KIMS kit. It has it. It has the ICT infrastructure. All they need to do is to be open with themselves. Be truthful to Kenyans. If it means opening up these servers and cleaning them to assure Kenyans we are going to begin conducting these elections on a clean slate. This is what will give confidence to the Kenyans. Number two, IEBC must also be seen to be impartial in the sense in which it conducts itself. Because one, you cannot have the a state minister here deciding that you are going to conduct this election on this particular date, and in the evening, as if you are picking cue from a choir master, you come and say it has to be on the 17th. And this is the wrong precedent that Bukati put himself in. Because I am sure if they made that independent decision by themselves and probably said, Kenyans, in response to the court's direction, we have corrected our systems, we have put everything in place, and we believe that whatever we have done should give us a clean and fair election, we are proposing that this is the date we shall conduct the presidential elections. There would be no problem. However, if the chairman of the IEBC continues flip-flopping, picking instructions from whatever political quarters, then he does not inspire the confidence of Kenyans. And that is why you are seeing now the Infotrack poll result is validating what Kenyans are thinking. And therefore, it really calls for concerted effort from the IEBC to work round the clock to convince Kenyans we are conforming with what the court ordered us to do. To muddy the waters, now you are seeing these guys saying, fine, because we gave these guys a 2-year contract, we must also print the ballot papers from Al Ghurair.
But let's be fair to IEBC.
No, let me also just say, why should we waste taxpayers' money building other economies when some of these things can even be done by the government press here?
Professor Adekoya, let's be fair to IEBC, because they also do not enjoy the luxury of actually having read this judgment by the Supreme Court. They're also waiting for the written judgment just like everyone else, but they're also fighting, trying to beat the deadlines that we have. Organizing, you've been indicted. You've been told you've made a few mistakes here and there. The details are yet to come out. Then you're still expected to conduct an election. Even then, they must be operating blindly by this point.
First of all, I think what Kenyans are lacking, and the majority, both learned and unlearned, is exposure. Had we followed the path of Malaysia, India, Pakistan, and other developed countries, and Botswana in Africa, for example, where they sent their young after independence to go outside the country to learn from the habits of the people out there and come back and develop the country, the issue of IEBC would not have been here. But having said that, it doesn't mean that even those who are on IEBC have not been exposed. Probably they were taken to study, but under some kind of situation, not like my situation where I was a grave digger and a security guard, and it the hard way, learned it the hard way. I am looking at Kenya from the perspective of what ought to have been done had this man of the IEBC been exposed properly. He must have been resigned. We will not be talking about IEBC team right now. The deputy president is now blaming the chairman of IEBC for having night meetings. Chiloba is being blamed for doing what he did. What's wrong with them saying, we have done a mistake, the courts have come in, they have also found us to have actually been in this kind of indisposition, we are going home. They have insisted to be there. Chebukati himself said that we have to wait for the Supreme Court ruling in 21 days, and then from there we shall come up and take matters onwards. What Kenyans expected out of that statement was that they would get directions as to what the Supreme Court decision was. But the man comes up and said October 17th. Well, I sit on the political party's liaison committee because I am a political party leader in this country, and every party is given a chance, one chance on the political liaison committee. As my friend said here, it's quite very clear. But one thing is, the political party's liaison committee has been starved of finance. They have no team. They don't even have an office. And even if they have one, they have a temporary one. So this issue of coalescing all the political parties under the PPLC is not there. Let us put it this way. From the way I'm saying things, from the way demands are coming out, we do not have what is within the judgment. We don't know what it is. And how do you expect other players to come on board when they are being coerced that election must? The word must actually should be removed from some of us. Let us see if Chebukati can come up and say, yes, even though I said 17, but we still have these days, just like what Mudavadi is saying. What measures did he arrive at to conclude that he should hold the elections on the 17th? And then later on, you see the squabbles within the IEBC. He's sacking the CEO. Other commissioners are coming in and said, you made your own unilateral decision. Something is wrong. And probably these elections will not be held based on what is going on right now.
And that appears to be a very real possibility, Ms. Baraza, that actually at the end of the 60 days, at the end of October, we might find ourselves in a situation where we still haven't held the fresh presidential polls.
I think, in my very honest opinion, I would disagree slightly with my gentleman, the professor. The court made it very clear that you should hold elections within 60 days. Meaning it can be done in 20 days, it can be done in 10 days. There is no criminality by IEBC decided that it will be done on 17th. The proponents who are saying that IEBC should wait for the full Supreme Court judgment, I think is very wrong. This NASA demands the conditions that are giving IEBC, I think is very wrong. We are behaving as if we are in a country that doesn't have electoral laws. We have the Constitution, we have the electoral laws. What we need is the IEBC to develop a checklist and to develop the metrics or the indicators to check to confirm that they are in total compliance with the law. And if they will have any meeting with NASA, it should be a meeting to check the level of compliance with the provided law. When the Supreme Court said that you never conduct the elections within the law, it's like a bishop telling his reverend that you preached but you are quoting wrong verses and wrong chapters. So what you need to do is you need to go back to your Bible. You don't have to wait for the bishop to tell you that you decided this was a wrong verse, this was a wrong chapter. I think we should avoid being crybabies. We have the laws in this country, we have the world elections laws. We should not behave as if this is a banana republic that doesn't have laws that we had again to begin receiving memorandum from political parties on how we are going to manage the affairs of elections of this country.
Have you gone through the demands?
I have gone to the demands. They are ridiculous. They are ridiculous. We have the law. They must engage with the IEBC based on the existing laws of this country.
Do you think any of this is beyond the scope of IEBC?
Absolutely. Some of them are reasonable. What is they can decide to print ballot papers from government printer. They can go to Al-Ghuraya. They can go even to Uganda. They can go to everywhere. As long as whatever they are doing is within the provisions of the Electoral Act and the regulations of IEBC, we have them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well said, Dr. Kabari Karanja. 31.5 days to October 17th. Yes. Do you think it will happen?
Well, I think it's a wait and see.
What's your gut feeling? Do you think it will happen?
I think it will happen. I'm also thinking about who gains and who benefits if it does not happen.
Yes.
If you observe the political space right now, NASA is not campaigning. I've not seen that vigorous campaigning. I'm wondering why are they not campaigning. And from my observations, if I was advising NASA, I know they have done their homework. They have looked at the numbers behind the scenes. They have done their homework. They have looked at what happened. The issue is being raised to be done before we go for elections. Yes, IEBC did. There were those errors and mistakes and so forth. We can't fix everything before within the next 30 days. There are things that need to be fixed. If I was advising NASA, I would tell them probably, if I were you, I would not go for elections.
But that would mean a crisis.
Let me finish. Have they arrived at such a judgment? Not going for elections means what? Because we can't hold the country to ransom. It means that we might begin to have a dialogue. That although we are avoiding this coalition and some kind of things, we might find ourselves in a situation where we are discussing exactly that. The issue is, should we move into that or slip into that kind of discussion? Who will be calling the shots? Who will be guiding the discussion so that that side benefits? That is something that Jubilee should wake up and contemplate. So that if it is a mature discussion that we must have, at the meet, yes, we know there are no saints working at IEBC. They are human beings. Why don't we set up a mechanism to discuss, put the interests of the country first, discuss, yes, mistakes were made and so forth. How do we get into these elections?
When you say discuss, discuss with who?
Appreciate, number one, the political parties, the players. Number one, and I want to echo what was said by a colleague about an order was made, issued by the Supreme Court. You need to conduct, first of all, they made a determination, IEBC, you made these errors, mistakes, irregularities and so forth. Then the same court orders IEBC to conduct elections in 60 days. Appreciating that, we need this being a political competition where you are trying to outsmart each other. We need the players, the political leaders. And I like what the church, the religious leaders did when they accompanied the IEBC in their retreat. The key players, let's have a discussion, appreciate mistakes were made
between IEBC
and the key players, having Kenya first. Appreciate errors were made, and don't think there will be no errors in the next election. There will be errors. Let's not look at textbook case elections. There will be errors. We are human beings, but let us put Kenya first. Let's agree. There are so many things that we need to fix after the elections about what happened. But right now, let's avoid this burden on Kenyans' shoulders. And also the effect, this is most important, the effect this continued prolonged uncertainty of the Kenyans.
Eric, if at all, then NASA, as they accuse, probably they're not really keen on the elections, then it should be incumbent upon Jubilee to ensure that the elections do happen, even if it means having that roundtable discussion with IEBC and the NASA representatives, just to iron out issues, just to ensure that the elections do take place.
It is not a requirement.
It is not, but I'm saying
it is not a requirement.
It is
called professional courtesy. That is what you call professional courtesy, but it is not a requirement. Note. And let me also respond at the same time to my good friend, the professor, who happens to be my senior as well. When the court order came out, it was very clear that even though there were some inconsistencies with this body called IEBC, they made a decision to tell IEBC to go back and organize another election. To correct my senior professor here, there is nowhere in the court order they said, go and remove this officer and this officer and this officer in IEBC.
I didn't say that.
And then conduct an election. They told them, go and conduct an election. And not just that, in accordance to the Constitution and in accordance to the law. Now, the question is this. We have an election that is coming up. We cannot be devious to the fact that we need a united country before and after these elections. So how do you unite the country? Why can't we have, and I agree with my brother here, my brother Ken, why can't we have a stakeholder kind of approach, whereby
a wider table just beyond the IEBC?
Not necessarily, that is the prerogative of the IEBC. How it is conducted is the prerogative of the IEBC. But why don't we reach out to stakeholders? And not just NASA. NASA is just one of them. We saw them reaching out to the European Union.
Because I need to give them also 30 seconds to say something.
They reach out to as many people as possible. Even the so-called NGOs and all these other people. Because we are all Kenyans. Anybody who has an opinion that can be progressive, why don't you form a kind of a setup to allow people to bring in that kind of communication? Because we all want to improve our institutions. Then come up with a good way forward. Because in as much as you're collecting all those opinions, the final decision to be made is the prerogative of IEBC in accordance to the Constitution and the law.
30 seconds each, the three gentlemen. What should happen between now and 31st and the 17th of October for it to happen? We only have 31 days to go.
The buck stops with IEBC, and I would want to echo Eric's statements that they need to quickly call a stakeholders forum, and from what they will gather there, adopt what will resonate with the stakeholders, and we can be able to hack it.
Not adopt, but consider. By law.
Yeah, first of all, I have to correct my good friend here that I'm a very well seasoned and learned lawyer, and therefore I don't just say things out of the blues. I'm following Chebukati's immediate statement after the court verdict. He said, and he said it very, very categorically, he said, we shall wait for the judgment and lead the way forward, which means we want to see what was in the judgment before we make any decision. 3 days thereafter, he came up with this date of the 17th. That is very, very clear. I'm not saying that the court removed this, said remove this and that and that. No. Now to echo on that also, Chebukati, of late, 2 weeks ago, he actually came up with a list of his own officers where he sidelined Chiloba. That means that house is not in order. And trust me, those who want to force the election on that particular day without cleaning up the mess, and I agree with you too, on how we can have consensus between the IEBC and the players, or to have a neutral party to come and sit down both of these people. The country is going to have no elections if that is not happening. And it's possible it can happen. Yes. Some of us can come in and sit these people down. If they can't sit down because they want to mimic what they want to for their own selfish interests, then Kenyans can tell them, go home. We have young people like this one who can come on board. Thank you.
Okay. Because of time, 30 seconds please, Mheshimiwa, as we wrap up.
I think Kenya has the simplest electoral process, from identification of voters into the voting process, into the counting, into the pronouncement of the results at the polling centers, and the electronically transmission of the same results into the national tallying center. What we had was that some of the presiding officers were not gazetted, some of the forms were not signed, others were being declared as fake, some of the results were being sent to Nairobi via text SMSs, and in terms of fixing all those small administrative errors, you can do them in 1 week. What Chebukati needs is not meeting with the political parties, but maybe is a legal expert to guide him on how to comply with the various existing electoral laws. What Kenyans need, we need elections on the 17th, where we move away from electioneering period, campaigns, into delivering the service to the Kenyan people.
Thank you so much, Didmas Barasa, MP Kimilili, George Ojakoya, political analyst, Ken Ambani, political analyst, Karanja Kabare, Dr. Kabare Karanja, and Eric Wanjohi, for your very well considered opinions on these issues that we are discussing today, that has to do with the petition to remove CJ Maraga from office, and of course the fact that 31 and a half days to the date set for the repeat presidential elections, we're still not sure whether or not we're going to have the polls. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We need to leave studio now and pave way for the Swahili team to continue these discussions on Citizen Extra. I'll be back with the news at 1 p.m. My name is Fred Indimuli. Good afternoon.